The first few years I was on Morph Market heavy. I mean, I was checking in the morning, checking midday at night, just, because sometimes just people, that's the type of site where people can just post whenever, so you never know what's going to
Hmm.
pop up. And
Hey there, and welcome back to the Gecko Cove Connection, the Gargoyle Gecko podcast. My name is Bobby, and in today's episode, we're going to be interviewing Armand Rutter from Armriculatus. Now, I wanted to bring Armand on because he's in a very similar situation to myself. We both started with gargoyle geckos in 2020. We both have even longer histories with other reptiles, but only been breeding just this season. So I wanted to pick his brain on what his journey was like, see how it's similar to mine, how it's different, and just learn from each other. So if that sounds interesting to you, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Cove. Well, welcome our very second guest. This is Armand Rutter. He is the proud owner of Armriculatus. And I'm just happy to have you on. Thank you for saying yes to coming on the show.
absolutely, I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk geckos.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many people probably in our lives that love talking geckos, so to find other people
Yeah.
is a real joy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So how long have you been keeping reptiles?
Yeah, so I started a lot like everyone else, just when I was a young kid. Here in Ohio, we don't really have, that extravagant of species, so it's more like salamanders, toads, frogs, things like that. But I was always, interested in that in the summers. I'd go to creeks and stuff like that, and I'd take care of things during the summer, and I'd release them during the end of the year. But after that, kind of growing up, I got into sports and other hobbies. So, I always had a pet, but, nothing really serious, just like, something to have, to take care of and admire. But, it wasn't until kind of around when COVID hit, I was back home from school. School had went online from college, and, I just found myself, scrolling across the internet, looking at reptile videos like I used to when I was a kid, and I found gargoyles, and I heard of them before, but I never really got into New Caledonian species. I had a crested gecko when I was a teenager, but yeah, just I saw a few, and what really stood out with me with them is their color and just the
Yeah, the
vibrant
red's
reds and
gorgeous.
oranges, yeah, and things like that. So, yeah, so I got a blotch, and that's how it started, and then from there, it's
It
went
just
up from
explodes.
there.
Well,
Oh yeah,
why I'm really excited to talk to you today is that you and I are actually in a very similar point in our hobby.
yeah,
We both have been in the reptile game for a while. I both grew up with nature, but really didn't dive into breeding until COVID. And I think a lot of people, hopefully a lot of potential listeners to this, can relate to that, right?
yeah,
I know that the amount of people who got into the hobby in 2020 or 2021 was huge. And we got in when everything was super expensive, right? We didn't
yeah,
know it
oh
was
yeah,
expensive. We just thought that was the
yeah,
price. But now we're kind of learning that the market's dipping a little bit, but we'll get to that later. But what's kind of cool is most people that I hear talking about their hobby, they've been in it for, 7, 8, 9 years, or just
hmm
invested a ton of money right away. And I feel
yeah.
like, knowing you a little bit, we've talked. This is the first time we've talked virtually, other than just through chat. But I know we probably have similar size collections. So how many geckos are you sitting at right now?
Right now, I only have 16 geckos. One of them's a lychee hatchling, and then
Okay.
I have two other lychees that are adults, and then the rest are gargoyles. But so pretty small scale for being in for 4 years. But
Yeah.
I feel like I did it with some intention, so I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah. Well, and that's the same place I'm at. So I've got, I sold off my lychees, sold
hmm
off my crested geckos. They're great animals. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
them. I just, kind of like you, invested more into the Gargs. And so right now I've got 6 babies, which I hatched out myself. This is my first season hatching.
hmm
And I'm really excited about that. I've got, about twice as many eggs incubating right now, which is also very exciting.
Oh yeah.
But I only have, oh man, what, 5, 6 ready to breed adults at this point, and I started back in 2020.
Yeah.
And I bought all those as babies,
Mhm.
grew most of them up. And so to me, I wanted to go with quality over quantity and
Yeah.
really be intentional. And it sounds like that might be the route you were going, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, definitely. My first, a couple, I kind of had a strategy just in terms of, I wanted to test my own eyes. For example, like one of the first gargoyles I got was at a local show, and what I did was I approached it where I wanted to take a chance on one that was smaller so I could test my skills in terms of raising up a baby because I've never done that before, obviously. And I
Yeah.
also wanted to test my skills in terms of, having the eye. You hear that sometimes with the other podcasts and things like that,
Yep.
just like what is the potential going to be with this baby. So I did that with a few, and it turned out to be good. I mean, I got some quality animals for a low price starting out, and I also paid the price on the higher end for those cornerstone animals. So
Yep. Yeah, and it's a mix of the two. When you were looking for your initial Garg, so you talked about it kind of having the eye, and I
yeah.
completely relate to that. I kind of lucked out. I went to my local pet store, which happens to be a fantastic gargoyle breeder,
Yeah.
Birds and Bees Pet Shop in Crystal Lake, Illinois. So if anybody's ever near there, stop by, say hi. Dan's fantastic. But my very first gargoyle is my six stripe Hawaii, and
Mhm.
I mean I couldn't have lucked into a better starting gecko,
Yeah.
And then my second one was also from him, and it turned out to be. Have you seen that super red base, red stripe girl that
Yeah.
I show off?
Yeah.
That's her. And I remember walking in there, and I barely had the money. I just sold one of my crested geckos, and he's like, "Trust me, you will not be disappointed. This is from one of my best lines," and it was like just shy of $500. It was probably
Mhm.
just at 500, and I was like, "Can you do 450?" He goes, "No, no, no, no. You trust me, this is worth it." And I'd never spent that
Yeah.
much on a gecko, but you could tell, like I thought I could tell the potential, and he also kind of helped me out with that. So sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you do get the eye. The gecko that you actually, how we met was that you actually bought a gecko from me and reached out. You want
Yeah.
to tell that story real quick?
Yeah, so I actually reached out to you, I think even before that, and you know what I did was it's just sometimes those geckos that you really need for certain projects, they're just not going to be on a mainstream market like Morph Market or just something that's going to be posted. Sometimes you have to go into the DMs or the personal messages, and you have to ask people, listen, I'm looking for a cornerstone animal. I'm looking for a game changer, really. And that's kind of what I saw with the gecko from you. And I just I politely asked you. I felt like, and I was just like,
Oh yeah, you were.
hey, I really like this gecko. I understand it's not for sale, but if there was a price that you could put on it, what would it be? And we discussed it, and I paid the asking price, and it is what it is. And sometimes you have to do that. It's not always about shaving a few hundred off and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Sometimes you have to pay the price to get what you want. And at the end of the day, I could have settled for something less, maybe that I saw on Morph Market or something like that. But I took the chance, and I'm really happy with it.
Oh, I'm glad. So she's doing well.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
think she's gonna
So
lay duds
actually,
soon.
oh, I bet she was a big girl when I had her. I
Yeah.
actually, and you know this, but I got her from a friend of mine I met actually at Tinley. So it's kind of full circle how you just meet people and things work out, right?
Yeah.
So Chris from Sandalwood Geckos, he
Mhm.
produced her. He produces some amazing geckos. The guy really is underrated at this point, in my opinion. And I saw her just sitting there at on the table, and I didn't have any money to buy her, and I just kept in touch with him. And he hooked me up with her a little bit later on, and she was, I mean, her color really exploded. So talk about that eye earlier we were talking about.
Yeah.
He didn't. I don't think he even expected her to turn out as nice as
Mhm.
she started to, and I can only imagine what she looks like now. But yeah, she was hard to let go. I did not want to
Yeah.
sell her, but you made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And like you said, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and
Yeah.
go for it. It's how I've gotten a lot of my other, really nice geckos is just reaching out to people I really respect and look at and see some of their quality online. And it's not always the things they have posted. Sometimes those backdoor deals are the best ones. So have you gotten any other geckos that way?
A few, not really like that spontaneous, I guess. I've kind of just inquired around, like, just to breeders and like, hey, I'm looking for this specific look. Like, do you have anything that's a male, well started, this and that? So similar things, but that was kind of just on the limb. But
Yeah, that was you surprised me. So, but thank you. You fueled my hobby for a little bit there. Awesome. Well, I mean, even just looking at Morph Market, how often are you going through that and looking through Morph Market? Or are you pretty established where you just have your starter geckos at this point?
So, the first few years I was on Morph Market heavy. I mean, I was checking in the morning, checking midday, at night, just, because sometimes just people, that's the type of site where people can just post whenever. So you never know what's going to pop up, and you might be the first person to see it. You message them, and then you go from there. I've actually snagged a few geckos like that I felt like were, underpriced, and it's just I was probably the first person to see it, and I got a hold of it. So
that's awesome. So did you always like set a budget for each one? Like, how did you? I mean, I know for myself, I don't want to get into my story right now. I want to hear about it from you. But like, what was your initial when you first started getting into these gargoyles? Did you set a budget and start growing that? Did you kind of fall into it where then you got addicted and then started to spend more and then look for more, cash? How did you actually get rolling? Because I feel like it's hard for people to get started looking at the price tags of some of these geckos, especially the nicer ones.
Yeah, I always had like this thing in my mind where I knew I wanted to focus on quality, and I knew like if I spent more in the beginning, I would reward myself in the end, just making higher quality animals, things that people aren't seeing. But, I found ways to get around that. So obviously I was buying younger geckos, they weren't the prices of an adult, they were unsexed. Like I said before, you kind of go off the eye, you don't take a chance, but, maybe some that have a little bit more potential than others based off the lineage or things like that. So, I kind of looked at lineage. I looked at potential, things like that. Tried to get them younger, but towards the more recent years, I've had to get some that are sex just because I've had some grow up, and now I need pairs to match them. And it's not about
exactly
getting that starting stock. It's more about matching them up now and really taking things serious.
You mean you don't want to wait another 3 years to breed them?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem. Yeah. Now I'm at the point where I would probably look at picking up one more like killer adult male, even though I've got some grow out males that are just mind blowing at this point. But just for the sake of breeding some of the females I have, that might be my next pickup. I think right now it's always kind of evolving what you're looking for, right? You're trying to create that recipe, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I need this ingredient, and you can't wait to grow up, that little 3 gram gecko. That's a good price. That's awesome. One thing that I think is kind of cool about this, and I kind of mentioned it, how I kind of met Chris, who originally produced the gecko I sold you. But have you found that like sometimes when you buy a gecko from somebody, it's easier to ask sort of those mentoring questions, or just to connect with them afterwards? It's nice just to reach out and ask questions, but I feel like sort of investing in their geckos has really paid off for me with certain people I've bought from. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, tend to trust you more after, you give them business, which is rightfully so. I mean, but I think they also have the obligation to, answer your questions if you do give them their business, as long as you're respectful and, you give them their time. But yeah, I think I've definitely seen, a lot of people that I've bought from really, show me respect with communication. Anything I've had to ask them, they've had to answer for. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing I will say about the hobby in general, maybe again, I'm only a few years in. Have you? I mean, I haven't had many negative experiences talking to people asking questions, inquiring about it. You know, sometimes you'll hear on different, YouTube channels and things like that where people are like, oh, it's really exhausting to, get 1,000 questions and then they don't buy from me, which I can understand 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I've never felt like someone didn't want to talk to me, and I have, I'll be honest with you. I've asked some people a bunch of questions and it just wasn't the right fit, and I haven't bought from them, and they've always been super nice. So that's one thing, at least with the gargoyles. It's probably the same in a lot of New Caledonia species, but so far the gargoyle community, I've absolutely loved it because I've not met a single person where I'm like, wow, what a jerk.
Yeah. And I also think like the newer age of breeders are more opted to help each other, it seems like, in terms of how the older generation approach things for whatever reason. But so I think we lucked out with, in terms of the time frame that we started in.
I agree. I think it's just easier to talk to people today with all the social media. For sure. I mean, how many people, you even admitted, you got into it because you saw it on Instagram, and all of a sudden you see this new species and it's like, what is that? That's not my bearded dragon I used to have, right? So speaking of kind of like finding gargoyles, and it's easy to say, okay, I had this vision, but that vision came from somewhere, right? And with gargoyles right now, we really have black and whites, reticulated, blotched, and striped, right? And then you get to the super blotch, super stripe, that kind of stuff. So there's not a huge variety. I think the possibilities are huge right now with gargoyles to find new genes. But like, did you ever have certain breeders that you would just scour their website, or that you just loved looking at their page, that maybe you could tell us about, that really inspired you or maybe gave you some inspiration?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll start out with Gargoyle Queen. She's got so many pictures to look through, so many different groups. I mean, anything you could think of, I feel like she's got a variation of. So definitely she inspired me a lot. Actually, she had Globulin is one of her breeders, and he's actually the father to one of my best males. So he's probably my favorite gecko. So I had to get a gecko from him. But yeah. Just looking through her breeding pictures, and what she does is really nice is she'll show babies and she'll show their progression all throughout 10 grams, 15 grams, 20 grams, all the way you see their progression all the way out, which is really cool. So I'll definitely say her. And then one person that I haven't bought one from yet, but I really like to, is Cosmic Exotics.
Yes, I love her website page.
Yeah, I think she has a really nice website, and I think she has a lot of quality gargoyle geckos, so I'll say those two.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of those. I definitely utilize both their websites. I think that Gargoyle Queen probably has the best website for information.
Yeah.
Whether that be sexing your gargoyle, what different morphs are that have been defined so far. And you could tell that she has been in the game for a while. She knows her stuff. And so, I love the lineage. And like you said, kind of, I think that's how I started to develop. You talk about that eye for the baby, right? How else are you going to do that without experience? Well, if people are willing to put it on their website like that, that's money.
And that's a thing that we could kind of skip steps with, in terms, we don't have to hatch out the babies and do it. We could look at her thing, and that's a tool for a new breeder to use, stuff like that. So
absolutely, yeah. And if people aren't doing that, go to places like her website. When I built my website, I know no one's looking at that right now. I'm not that big, and I've only produced a few geckos, but that's something I'm putting in there, as well as with Cosmic. What she's really good at is also putting in the lineage, and I know gargoyles it's sort of hit or miss if you get lineage. I love that it'll go back as many generations as she knows. And you can literally click, I love that gecko. What do the parents look like? Okay, what do the parents look like?
Oh, yeah.
And it's so surprising to me. You look at some of these ultra blotches or these super six stripes, and it's like the saturation is huge. And you look at mom and dad, I'm like, they're good. And then you look at grandparents, they're like, okay, you saw something there. Like, they were not that fancy. And it's like, okay, if I'm starting at, her second tier at least, can I get to that ultra tier quicker? I don't know. That's what I want to kind of find out, but it's kind of fun to look at the website and plan.
For sure.
So, Speaking of planning, you know, I have a vision for my geckos and what I'm trying to produce. Now, you bought one of my nicest blotch girls. Are blotches your thing? What's your vision? What are your goals right now?
Yeah, so right now I have really three main projects, but they're all different groups. So I have like a blotch group, and then with like a skeleton female mixed in there. There's a super blotch male. There's another just nice blotch. Then I have another group with your girl. That's gonna be just like vibrant base color. She has a really dark red base color, and then I have a male that has a really red base color. Then I have another female with a really vibrant, unique base color. So really just with that group, I'm just trying to see where I can take the base color. I want to drown it out. You know, maybe they have some really reddish purplish hues in there, so I want to see where that goes. You know, and maybe just prove those out. So yeah, and then I just have a stripe group with probably one of my better gargoyles. The male is the stud of that group. He's just really vibrant, a lot of coverage on the laterals, really nice thick stripe down the middle. That's from Gargoyle Queen. And then I have a 6 stripe female in that group, and then just 2 really nice stripes that complement him well. So I'm just, you know, going to see what they all produce. I'm excited for them.
Nice. And have you produced so far with any of them so far?
So I have one group that I've had 2 eggs from. The one I actually have from them is 10 months old, almost to the day, and is 40 grams. And the mom was 60 grams at a year old. So I think genetics might have something to do with that. But that's the only one that I kept.
Completely.
The clutch mate I gave in a giveaway that I did with Erin at Southern Girl Exotics that she organized.
Who I just had on.
Yeah. So I was really thankful for that, but that's where the other baby went. But yeah, I have 2 eggs from her in the incubator right now, and she's probably going to lay soon. But that's the only pair that I have going right now. I actually just paired up. Actually, I have another one going right now that I just paired up with Stripe Group. So still starting out, you know, still learning, still getting things going.
Yeah. No, and that's one thing I'm learning about gargoyle geckos versus crested geckos. You know, it's really hard sometimes to have the expectations of how many eggs can you truly produce, right? Because in one season, I've got 3 different girls going right now. One girl is like clockwork. Every 60 days, I get 2 gorgeous eggs, and I've got more babies from her than anybody else. Then I've got that red girl who's thrown me 2 sets of duds, 1 perfect clutch, which I've got 1 gecko I'm really excited about growing out. And then I'm waiting on her. You know, she was due. And every day I'm checking that bin to see if there's eggs in there. Yeah. And, you know, it's like a kid disappointed on Christmas morning every day. But one day it'll be Christmas, and it'll be awesome. Yeah. And then I've got my 3rd female who I was debating whether or not she was even fertile because she's my oldest, and she was my largest gecko until my year-old one, which I'll get to because I agree with you that it's totally genetic on size. But, yeah, she threw 1 random egg. That's it. So we'll see if she throws more this season. But they are so sporadic, which is good for the price of them, I guess. It stabilizes things. But, it does. I don't know. But it's frustrating. I mean, you put so much time into it, and do you ever just go like, man, I thought I was going to get like 6, clutches every year from each girl. Because it's easy to do the math when you're getting into this and okay, on the low end, what could this do, right? So I definitely, going back to the size thing, I've got 2 geckos they have the same father, different mother, but they're both from Firehouse Geckos. Have you ever seen his stuff?
Yeah, I have a female from him, one of my striped females.
You do?
Yeah.
Nice. If you want a blotch, I am telling you, he has a full sibling to the girl that's literally 62 grams. She's 11 months old, okay? And she is a crazy super blotch. Almost identical twin, in my opinion. on Morph Market right now. It's been sitting there at like $5.50. I'm like,
Really?
how has nobody picked this thing up? So if this goes live and that gecko's still available, go over and buy it. But it's crazy. Both those girls, jumped up in size. And then, do you have other geckos that are the same age that, what sizes are they?
All my females are pretty much around over 50 grams. She's
You're
not.
doing something right.
Yeah. My males tend to grow a little bit slower. I've had not trouble with males, but I've just noticed that in general they grow a bit slower. And all my males, they take dubia roaches every time, but just for whatever reason, they just grow a little bit slower. So.
Yeah. No, I've noticed that my males definitely grow a little bit slower, but again, it's such a variation with my girls, and I keep them all the same. But these girls just eat their Pangea every single time. They actually won't take bugs, which is interesting.
Yeah,
my other girls
like
will take bugs, and the ones that take bugs, even though people say feed them bugs, they'll grow faster. I believe them, but my girls that take bugs are like 20, 25 grams at a year old, and I'm like, I'm not trying to power feed them, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I just let them grow. I give them close to 3 years before I'm even going to consider breeding them.
Yeah.
So, but good times, right? It can be frustrating, but it's exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have any other expectations going into this that maybe you've either met the expectations or have completely, things have surprised you with gargoyle breeding? Just collecting?
Just maybe the egg production's a little bit, like you said, more sporadic than I imagined it to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, right now for me, it'll be a hobby, and that's all it is for now. But I don't rely on this to pay my bills or anything like that right now. So, but
no,
yeah, but
it'd be nice if it did. But
yeah, but I mean, not really. I kind of came in with realistic expectations in terms that it was going to take a while to get started, and I was okay with that. And after hatching that first egg, having that first successful pairing, you just constantly have little steps along the way that keep your motivation going and keep your interest at the highest level that it could be.
Yeah. There's nothing like hatching out that first gecko. I mean, I've hatched out a few now, but I don't know. There's something special about that very first gecko.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I did it. I did something.
Right.
Right. Yeah. That was definitely an expectation. I think how much money I truly was going to spend, I underestimated. I think that was something that was an interesting pill to swallow. But at the end of the day, you pivot as things kind of evolve, right? Yeah,
I think, you just have to get over the mental hump. I think, a lot of people would look at us and be like, what are you doing, spending, sometimes what you spend on a gecko. But, a lot of people have different interests. Some people buy clothes, some people buy cars. It's what you like to do. And if you're buying it and it's, you like it, then do it. Just be smart about it. But, sometimes to get that, like we said, to get that certain cornerstone animal, you have to pay the pretty penny for it. And, just hope that it pans out in the end.
Right, exactly. Hopefully it doesn't croak on you, right?
Yeah.
And this is the first hobby that I've had because I've gotten into different reptiles. I've had I've saltwater aquarium. I have freshwater aquariums. This is the one hobby where it may break even eventually.
Yeah.
Depending on how I do it. But I think the nice thing about this hobby is that because you can make some money back, most people tend to reinvest it into the geckos, right? The people in it for the long haul. So like as soon as I start making any cash, this rack behind me is going to be all PVC. I already know who I'm buying it from. I already have that planned out. What system do you have for keeping your geckos right now? I see some tubs. I see some glass behind you.
Yeah, so
and what's your ultimate goal?
Right now, this is the only glass I have. That houses my pair of leeches. But, In terms of the enclosure setups, I just run simple 6 quart for hatchlings. Then around 15 to 20 grams, I move them up to a 29 quart. I forget
Okay.
what the dimensions are for those, but it's pretty similar to a 12 by 12 by 18. I think I'm just sacrificing height, but
Yep.
and then for adults, I do a 66 quart tub. And early on, I had some Exoterras, 12 by 12 by 18s, things like that. And right now, I'm just kind of focused on the health of the geckos, and I've found that the tubs, they hold humidity the best. You could see in them, they're not clear like glass, but you could see enough.
Yep.
And for now, I'm content with my setups. I think everyone's doing great. I think everything's optimal, and I think that's what's the most important. But I think down the line, maybe if I move out of a different room into a bigger space, I'll maybe invest into some PVC and things like that, because semi-bioactive or something like that maybe is what I'd like to go for all my cages down the line. But
Yeah.
yeah, for now,
Yeah. No, it's
I like to.
for now it's working, and that's the thing
Yeah.
I'm saying. For now it's working. I actually had a bunch of different enclosures, all bioactive initially, and they were great. They were
Yeah.
low maintenance for sure, easy to take care of, but and beautiful to see. But as I started to grow, I kind of like, all right, well, I can sell these and reinvest it. And I bought one more gecko with the money I
Yeah.
did. So, you do what you can to make your hobby work, and we're taking the best care. Plus, I'm in the Midwest. I think you're in the Midwest too, right?
Yeah, Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'm in Chicagoland area, and so to keep humidity, because I'm running my air conditioner all the time, right? And so that can dry things out pretty quickly. The tubs are fantastic for that.
Yeah.
So, if it works, it works. So, kind of going back, I want to talk a little bit about the gecko that I sold you had a beautiful red color base, right?
Yeah.
And so we've talked a little bit before this, and I want to kind of bring this to the audience's attention, where I think that there's a strategy to actually see if your baby, even before showing color, is going to have a color base. And so I think it's that zigzaggy kind of belly. But what's your take on the bellies of gargoyle geckos? Do you think that tells you anything as their babies?
I haven't heard anything or seen anything in terms of babies. I've only hatched 2 babies, and they weren't really, in terms of base color, going to show anything. But I've seen Mike Walsh over on Facebook. He's present in a lot of the groups, and he's mentioned that belly color a lot of the times will dictate the base color, no matter fired up or down.
Yep.
And I have one. It's actually not the girl from you. It's a different one, but it has this really vibrant orange base or belly color, but it doesn't really match up to the base color when the gecko's fired up.
Okay.
So I don't know. There might be something there in terms of just a different.
What colors
base
are they?
The belly is like an orange color. It's a vibrant orange, and then when she fires up, it's more of a red, pinkish color. But it's just really not. It's not what she is when it's fired down, and it's not. It just doesn't really match up. Like it's not. It's unique. It's hard to explain.
Very unique.
But,
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, I haven't heard that. I mean, I think it was Matt Walsh, right? Or no, Mike Walsh.
Yeah.
Mike,
Wolf.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt Walsh is somebody else. We won't talk about him. But Mike, he posted something like he was looking for, gargoyles with color bases, and I remember chatting with him, and he did bring that up, and I think it's a cool concept, and I've used it. I actually used it with the girl that I got eventually, which you have now. Is I was asking Chris, okay, what does the belly look like? And I've asked some other breeders, like my red male that I got from Renee King. I mean, he is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous red. You're probably better red than my girl is, and he had that same pattern underneath. And even with the babies I'm hatching, the ones that come from parents with really deep red or orange base colors, those are my babies with the zigzag pattern. The ones that don't have the zigzag pattern are from my parents that are
Hmm.
just, regular browns, tans, kind of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, white base color. So something to play around with. Do I think it's a
Yeah.
gene? Who knows? I mean, I'm so new to this, and but it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll look for that because I'm working with some red bases, so I'll look for that in my hatchling.
Yeah. Um, awesome. Uh, so is there anything with maybe your hobby that you're hoping to explore and change a little bit or experiment with at this point? Or are you pretty dialed in until you start producing?
I think I'm pretty dialed in for the most part. I like to experience different diets here and there. I mean, I've recently I've tried the aerotonic diet. I've had really good results with that. I'm actually really surprised how much my geckos like that. And I don't know if it's the more fresh fruit approach that he incorporates into
Yeah,
it.
because that's a powder you have to mix with fresh fruit, correct?
Yeah, you get fresh fruit and it comes like a regular diet, the actual diet, and you mix that up with the fresh fruit, and then you could freeze it, and just like you would with Pangea or Rapashi, you can freeze it and then thaw it out as you use it. And it stays pretty fresh, overnight. It stays less fresh than Pangea or Rapashi. You can't really leave it for
Sure.
too long, but I've been really pleasantly surprised with the results I've had with that. I think I'm going to use that more going forward.
Interesting. I mean, I should try that. Honestly, Ariel is one of my local guys here, and I
was
didn't
gonna
realize
say he's up
how
there.
awesome. Yeah, he's at the All Animal Expo all the time, and I've gotten a gecko or two from him. He really is a great breeder, and I've always seen the diet. I haven't pulled the trigger, so now that you've got me interested, I might have to
Yeah.
try it out. I'm just lazy, I'll be honest with you. So the fresh fruit, I've got two little kids under 2, and they'd take their little plastic forks
Yeah.
and come after me if I start stealing their fruit. But but yeah, I'm glad you like it. Interesting. You say, okay, you freeze it, and I've seen in forums where people ask, does that lower the nutrition? I personally don't believe it does. We freeze our food, all the time, and it
Yeah.
actually seals in the freshness.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
But-
say. That's what I've heard. It seals it in.
Right. So, I mean, some people have crazy ideas, but my thing that I just ran into, somebody was asking me about fruit flies. Now, you're using fresh fruit. Do you get more or less fruit flies, do you find, with this diet?
I think it's pretty much the same. I try to mitigate the problem with traps here and there. I was running an electric one for a little bit that helped out, but I don't really have a problem with them once the weather breaks in the winter. But it's mostly just like an early summer problem. There's a few lingering around now, but it's nothing really that.
And you don't
causes
feed fruit flies to anything else, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, my fruit fly problem started when I brought some in when I had Urodactyloides.
Oh, okay.
And so I was feeding the babies fruit flies. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, my wife's like, "Why is this stuff swarming everywhere?" I'm like, "They're flightless." Well, they found somebody and bred. But yeah, what the person online was asking me was if even with Pangea or Rapashi, if you freeze it after making it and then feed it to your geckos after you let it thaw, would that potentially lower the amount of fruit flies? Because their theory was there are eggs in the Pangea or Rapashi mix that once you hydrate it, they start to hatch. Again, I don't know the science behind that. It was just a comment that's interesting that I'm bringing up, but I figured since you freeze the food, maybe it's a similar situation. If you suddenly said, no, I don't have any, well, maybe there's something to it, but it doesn't sound like there is.
That's really the only one that I freeze. The other one, when I feed Pangea or Rapashi, I kind of just make that fresh by the bottle as I feed.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get about 3 feedings out of a ketchup-sized bottle. So, and I only fill it up 3/4 of the way each time. Mm-hmm. So you don't put that much in. You just mix what you need that feeding.
Yeah, I kind of just do just enough. If I need a little bit more, I'll mix more. But I kind of like doing it that way. I've done it, a few times. I make a little bit too much. I stick the bottle in the fridge, but
Yeah, it lasts,
yeah,
I'd rather not waste it. So
yeah,
they waste enough for me, I'll be honest with you.
yeah.
Do
For
most
sure.
of your geckos, like, because do you keep them in groups right now?
No, I
Or,
house all mine individually. Just a pair
okay,
is
you're
together
just
right now.
planning on doing groups eventually.
I just refer to them as groups. I'll probably just do individual
Okay.
pairs, but I just meant in terms of like the projects. I kind of just refer to
Yes.
them as groups.
Okay,
But,
no, that's a great
yeah.
distinction because I think that's one interesting thing is I see there's sort of two camps. There's the,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to do a group, kind of like you were explaining, but you can do it in two ways. You can either rotate the male in that group, or you put them all together and you put them in a bigger enclosure and breed them that way. I personally don't know how anybody could know the lineage at that point
Yeah.
of the gecko, which, some great geckos come out of that way, and I'm not
Hmm.
knocking it. I'm just saying if you are trying to, say, hey, this gecko came from these two,
Right.
it's pretty hard in my opinion. So I
Right.
was curious what your plans are. So are you planning when you do breed to kind of rotate them through? Have you thought that far ahead?
Yeah. Just maybe like rotate them. It just kind of depends, if I saw a visual lock, I'd probably separate it sooner, but maybe just give them a time frame of a week or two, and then maybe give them a week off solo, and then reintroduce them to the next female, something like
Yeah.
that. But
Do you
it's kind of
find there's a lot of... Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say you kind of just figure it out as you go. Like I said, we're both new, so I'm kind of just going as
Well,
I.
that's a great point. I mean, that's where I'm confused personally a little bit. I mean, I'm breeding them right now. I've got,
Yeah.
I've got my 3 males hooked up with my 3 females. That's easy math. That's
Mhm.
not going to be the way it's going to be my entire, gargoyle
Right.
gecko career. So,
I think
I've,
as you
I've
just like
seen different
if you.
videos. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say if you monitor their weight, just make sure if you can tell they're eating. Sometimes I know, obviously there's people out there that don't ever separate them, so it's kind of
Right.
there's a lot of different ways that it works.
There's a
That it
lot of
can
different
work
ways,
at
and that's
least.
confusing. You're right.
Yeah.
But to me, as someone new, it's confusing as all hell because,
Yeah.
like, I've got really respected people telling me, do them in groups. They need to be in at least groups of 3 to 4. Otherwise, you're going to have aggression. I've got people that say, no. Just keep them in for a week, take them out, put them back in maybe halfway through the season. Then I've got other people that are like, no, leave them in there the whole time. They're great. They're never going to have
Yeah.
issues. So because it's like, it's almost a free-for-all, do whatever works for you. For new breeders, like you and I just starting out, I just get frustrated. I don't know if you feel that way. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, am I going to do it right?
I think it's
Especially
just
when you're not getting eggs.
yeah. I think there's just so many different ways that people have success. It opens up a lot of different possibilities because how can you really argue it if someone's having success this way and they're having success the other way? So, I think as long as the animals are healthy, as long as you're seeing results, a lot of different
Yep.
things can work.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. There's a lot of different ways to get to success. But, I think my challenge is once you pick a way, try to stick to it for at least a
Yeah.
season. See if
Yeah.
it truly works. I think a lot of people, including myself, have had to catch myself where I'm like, ooh, all right, should I throw that male back in there? Should I keep them in there together? Should I not keep them together?
Yeah,
And you got to
right.
experiment a little bit with your own geckos. But the one thing, going back to expectations, my problem with expectations is that I thought things were going to work out one way, and when they don't, I question my husbandry sometimes
Yeah.
because I'm so new and I'm not
Yeah.
confident in it 100%.
Mhm.
So that's always fun. And I kind of lean on social media. I know that there's some great information on social media and not so great. I definitely I miss Red Rack and his videos. I'm trying
yeah.
to not that I'm stepping into his shoes at all. He did a fantastic job with his videos and information. I probably watched them 10 times each. But they did help. Did you ever watch his videos?
Oh yeah, I've talked to Jake a lot through the Instagram DMs. He's helped me with a lot. Shout out to Jake.
Yep.
He's a great guy.
He is so nice. Hopefully I can get him on here one of these days,
Yeah,
even though he's
for
taking
sure.
a break.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's what's
So,
so
did you ever...
I was just gonna say, I think what's so interesting about gargoyles is just the so many different ways that people have success. It's just like we talk about how they're not as prolific as something like crested geckos, but it's almost like, do we really know what the best care is for them? You know, because so many different people have success different ways. You know, have we found the code for them yet? So that's another way to look at it.
I think we're going to get there soon.
Yeah.
But I don't
think
we're ever going to be one, there's not going to be one Bible way of going about it.
Yeah.
So, I know, we talked a little bit earlier that you're no stranger to social media and YouTube. I kind of had to bring that up in here. I did watch some of your old videos, but can you tell the audience, how much just to show everybody how much you loved reptiles even as a kid, tell us a little bit about your social media experience going back in the day.
Yeah.
And how that's evolved over time.
So I actually have there's 2 channels on YouTube one's from 13 years ago, the other's from 14 years ago. But yeah, it was just me as a kid, just putting myself out there, just sharing my passion with the world. I was really influenced by a lot of people during that time that would just, show their reptile rooms, and I was just fascinated with it. And yeah, it's really nice to look back on that because it shows how much passion I still have for it, so many years later, and it's a humbling thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. It was fun seeing, a young version of you, showing off your turtle. And what was his name again?
Yoshi, I think.
Do you remember?
That one was.
Yoshi, great name. Who didn't have a reptile named Yoshi when they were younger, right?
Right.
So, no, I think that's really cool. And obviously, some of the social media came a little bit later on in our lives with Facebook and Instagram. But how do you utilize that today other than just communicating? Do you find it, helpful with your hobby? Do you find it frustrating? People have different experiences, but how are you liking it right now?
I think social media is great. I think that's kind of how I got involved into the whole reptile social media world, is just getting online, going back to how I used to go just see people on YouTube. I think that's becoming a lot more popular with the reptile side of things now. But yeah, I think Instagram's huge. I think, what Morph Menagerie and AJ do with their auctions, I think has really opened up a new world of market.
Yep.
Yeah, Facebook has been around for a while, but they still have the groups, and a lot of people have bad things to say about those groups, but I think there's a lot of information that people can learn from in a beneficial way on there as well. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of the sales are through social media, and Morph Market's really set up like a social media type atmosphere. So I think really, other than in-person shows, I think social media is everything. And
have you been to a lot of shows too?
I really haven't. I've been to my local one, the Cleveland Reptile Show. It's held at the Medina Fairgrounds, local to me.
Oh, nice.
But that's really the only one I've ever been to. Robbie Hamper, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a legend in the lychee game. But I think she started that show, and I think that's actually one of the first shows that was ever put on in the United States. So that's really the only one that I know
That's awesome.
of. I'd like to get to Tinley. I'd like to get to like Flora Fauna and things like that, but hope to get to.
Yeah, I'm spoiled.
Yeah, you got Tinley right there.
I got Tinley. I got Schaumburg. I've got the All Animal Expo. I'm definitely spoiled. So it's kind of crazy when you're just getting into this and you're meeting people, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, who was I just talking to?
Right.
Wait, they're actually a lot cooler than we even imagined, right? And so it's kind of nice that everybody seems so friendly, that even some of the big stars in our industry, they're just people, They're just friendly people trying to get people addicted to geckos. So now that's right, because the more people in this hobby, the better for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think social media is definitely a net positive for most of us, and it's how I met you.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun way of connecting, and that's what I'm trying to do with this show here. So yeah.
One thing that I noticed that people don't ever mention is, like, when I first started out, as I was growing my collection, like when I would get things in, some might be juvie, some might be hatchlings. I feel like people don't talk about the fact that sometimes maybe if your enclosures aren't uniform in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and like, some have a few air holes here, some have a little bit more here. I think you could run into problems in terms, some enclosures might be a little bit more higher humidity than others and things like that.
Yeah. No, I
So
agree. I mean, even just when I started out, like how I was creating, those air holes, right?
yeah,
It wasn't uniform. I didn't have my drill with the little circular bit on it quite yet, and I was literally like carving them out. So
hmm
even if it was just a little bit more, a little bit less, um, no one tells you how much to spray. They tell you to spray your gecko
yeah,
enclosure, but it's all okay. Do I spray for 30 seconds? Do I
hmm
spray for 15 seconds?
yeah,
Do I spray for a minute and a half? And the answer really is it depends on your humidity in your
hmm
room, right?
yeah,
But with that, that comes, there's a lot of confusion, right? You have to go and buy a good hydrometer. You got to go and actually measure everything. And we've, learned that over time, but
yeah,
it takes time. And it's frustrating, yeah,
yeah.
when you don't realize the little things affect it.
And if you don't, I mean, you could put a hydrometer in each enclosure, and it's not that expensive. But it could, if you guess and you don't have the same amount of ventilation in each enclosure, it could get a little bit tricky.
It does.
Because I've
Yep. And
definitely
even how
experienced
much you
that
put
with,
in each enclosure makes a difference.
yeah,
Have you
I've
noticed that?
definitely experienced like, you just have to work. Like some of them, I know this enclosure stays a little bit more humid, so I won't spray that as much. And
Hmm.
over time, you'll develop that if you have enclosures like that, if you don't make them uniform like you should. But
Yeah. Well, even when they're uniform, I like my bottom enclosures,
yeah,
they stay
yeah, yeah, yeah,
way more moist
right.
than the top enclosures,
Literally like a
right?
3 foot
I
difference.
Right, and you have to pay attention to
hmm
those things, otherwise you're just going to saturate
Yeah,
the geckos on the bottom. And I actually rotate my tubs for that
I
reason.
do the same.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that they're not always at the same level, but I still pay attention to just how much I'm soaking them. So yeah, hey, it's something that we have to talk about, but it's not super flashy,
hmm Yeah,
right? Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you, dude. I really do appreciate you being on the show.
absolutely.
So this is just kind of a fun side hobby for me, and I never thought in a million years I'd be doing something like this.
hmm
But I'm like, I think I listened to enough Gecko Pod episodes, and I'm like, when the hell are they going to have a Gargoyle episode?
Right. I don't know.
And then you saw Jake on there.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm always in the auctions and stuff like that, just because like I just love like chatting about geckos and like hearing people talk about geckos. Like a lot of times with like Gabby and them, they don't really mention gargoyles that much, but it's still the
Mm-mm.
hobby though, so it's still fun to learn about. Like I still watch every episode that they put out just because it's New Caledonian stuff. But yeah, I wish they did more stuff about gargoyles for sure.
Yeah, same thing with me. I watch it, and I don't intend to buy a crested gecko
hmm
right now. I do look to see if they pull out a stunner gargoyle one
Yeah,
day. The first time I actually watched the show, what was interesting about it was they had Brian from Sundown
yeah,
Exotics. What was fun is he brought in all these like killer gargs, and I
yeah.
didn't have. I was like just about to come into some money. And I'm like, all right, well, I won't buy this time. I could, but I'll wait till the next show. And then the next show, he's not there. I didn't realize he was just like a one-time guest.
Yeah,
I thought he was like always on there.
yeah.
And so I've been waiting for him to like reappear. So
hmm
hopefully one day he can give me some deals on some of
Yeah.
his gargoyles.
There's a
But
lot
yeah,
of
no,
people up there in Chicago, that area, in terms of
yep, yeah.
gecko people.
There are a ton of people around here. I mean, Ariel is huge. There's one guy that I get some of my best stuff from. His name is Oliver H2O Reptiles.
I've seen a few of
I
his
mean,
stuff.
just insane.
Yeah.
Some of the big name people have gotten stuff from him too. He'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's mine," and he's the guy I would say is probably my. I've got a few mentors in this game, but he's the one. If I need to know something 100%, I'm giving him a call. So I
Yeah.
probably bother him a little bit too much.
Do you talk to Darren a lot at Firehouse Geckos?
Yes, he's one of my other
He's
big
a really
guys.
good guy. I like
Nicest
him.
guy in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you said you bought a stripe from him, right?
Yeah, she was one of my first, actually. He was a really good guy to talk to, answered all my questions. That was pretty early on, but yeah, she's actually paired up right now with my guy from Gargoyle Queen, so
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, he's just got some really quality stuff, and but honestly, I've never met someone who's just like so nice, and he like you never feel like you're bothering the guy.
Right.
You know, so I hope that I can emulate that a
Yeah.
little bit moving forward with my career. But yeah, there's some cool people. I really want to go to Flora Fauna now that I've seen that.
Yeah, that
I
seems
feel
really
like that
cool.
would be kind of a yeah. Now I got to convince my wife to let me go. That's a whole nother story.
Did she like the gargoyles? Or how does she feel about it?
She likes fluffy animals.
Okay.
So it's not that she doesn't like them. She'll hold them. She likes them better than when I had bearded dragons. But I mean, it's not her favorite. Like if they
Yeah.
went tomorrow, she'd be fine with it.
Right.
Yeah, but then she'll let me have them. I'm happy with it.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then but it would be fun. I look at some of these like couples in the hobby.
Yeah.
It would be fun having a couple like buy geckos. I'd probably run out of money a lot faster.
Right.
So, but it is what it is, and you do the best you can. She keeps me pretty honest. Do you share your hobby with anybody?
I mean, just, my family's always known that I liked it, so they're pretty invested in it with me. I send them, like, if I hatch one out or I get eggs, they're always wanting to know what's next and stuff like that. I've got my cousin's really into it now. He doesn't have any, but he's always, wanting an update on, the babies and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So they all support me.
I found
they all think it's kind of different, but
yeah,
they
as
like
long
it.
as they're not calling you a freak.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, well, Armand, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun. It's really fun for me, again, is that we're in a somewhat similar place. So I would love to have you back on in like a year or so just to see where you're at. Yeah, you and me, I think we got some good things going on here, and I'm really excited to see what we hatch out. Maybe we can work out a trade in the future. But thank you so much for coming on. Before we sign off, you want to tell people where to find you if they're interested in reaching out to you or looking at a potential gecko in the future?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Armriculatus. I'm also on Facebook. My personal Facebook is Armand Rutter if you want to message me on there. But yeah, other than that, I'm on Morph Market, but I don't think I have any listings right now, so there might not be anything on there. But stay tuned. Yeah, I'm working on some pairings. Just waiting for a few males to hit weight, and I'll be hopefully producing some more eggs. So yeah, I'm excited. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you next time at the Gecko Cove.
I'll see you.
Hey, if you've enjoyed this video and want to encourage me to make more Gargoyle Gecko content, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, share this with a friend, and maybe check out one of the videos right over there. I'll see you next time on Gecko Cove.